Okay, good. So we're going to start. Thank you so much for coming to our session today. Do the right thing. I think that many of us in academic libraries are struggling with providing content for streaming video, and we're always, looking at models and trying to figure out the best thing to do. So that's what we're here to talk about, and I again hope that you all will be participating in this conversation. I am Sarah McCleskey. I am head of resource and collection services at Hofstra University, which is on Long Island, just about 20 miles east of Manhattan. And the departments that I manage get things to users in ways that are efficient. So I do document delivery, resource sharing, materials management, circulation, things like that. And one of the things that I do is media, is film and media, physical media, as well as streaming collections and acquisition. And so that's why I'm here to talk about that. I'm going to hand over the mic to Trey, who can tell you about himself.
Hi, I'm Trey Shelton. I'm the chair of the Acquisitions and Collection Services Department at the University of Florida, George A. Smathers Libraries. So the department I chair is about 17 positions strong, and we are responsible for purchasing all of the materials, obviously, keyword acquisitions. We also do a lot of collection strategy. We liaise with, AKA Cat Herd, about 50 some odd subject selectors who liaise obviously to their departments. Yeah, so we kind of do it all. We're also in charge of discovery, access and discovery. So we do a lot of cataloging work as well, a lot of record loading, and make everything accessible. I'm going to hand it over to.
Hi. Whoa. I'm Alex. I'm Vice President of Bullfrog Films and DocuSeek. So Bullfrog Films is a distributor, and DocuSeek, as you may know, is an academic streaming platform. So I'm really here to clarify the options and mechanisms for getting libraries the material they want. And it's very much in Bullfrog's and DocuSeek's interest to provide and support sustainable distribution models. Really, our long-term future depends on it.
Awesome. So, you want to advance the slides? We just want to talk about our discussion parameters today. We really do want this to be a discussion with you all, right? We just don't want to stand up here and talk or sit up here and talk. But during this discussion, we want to try to not bash or even point out specific platforms or vendors. There's obviously a lot of shakeup in this area of the industry right now. We're all going through lots of change, lots of stuff in the news. And we're not going to ignore facts, but we're not going to beat up on people either. And so we hope you can also abide by that as much as possible. So it's not about subscriptions to big academic platforms. It's a conversation about the academic video ecosystem, examining acquisitions models, choices, budget sustainability, fiscal sustainability for content creators and distributors. And whatever else you want to talk about, actually.
Yeah, we can talk about anything you want. It's a discussion. So I wanted to ask, how many of you here in the room are librarians? And how many are from vendors or library service providers? Okay, so we have a few. Okay, good. And if you're not either one of those, you're still absolutely welcome. And so as we start talking, please come up to the microphone because we're being recorded and it will be online. So I want everyone to be able to hear. So I am really interested in talking about the values that libraries, particularly academic libraries, have. What are our priorities? Why do we acquire content the way that we do? How do we make these decisions? I, as a librarian, I value building a permanent collection that is based on my institutional needs. I also value being able to provide content to support current curricular needs, our sort of traditional course reserves thing, but now obviously in an online environment. I have a strong commitment to responsible stewardship of institutional budget resources. I want to make sure that this money that is spent, the decisions that I make for how to allocate these dollars is really providing the most value to the institution. I also value sort of budget predictability. I like to be able to start my media funds spreadsheet. I have just a spreadsheet I keep from year to year where I can sort of put in commitments that I know are coming out of that budget, and I can see, okay, I know I'm going to be spending this and this and this, and this is how much I have left, and then I know what I have in sort of discretionary funds, and obviously I'm trying to stay within the budget that I have been allocated, so I have to be really careful. And I'm also kind of an obsessive monitor of funds, and that's true of me in life as well. and so for me, it's really important to be able to count for pretty much every dollar that is spent. And I also value directing the resources of the institution, the library dollars, where those dollars will have the most impact for good. So if content is content, I would rather spend money knowing that most of what I spend is going into the revenue stream for content creators and distributors. So that's like people like Alex. I love Bullfrog Films. Shout out to Bullfrog Films, but all the small distributors, medium-sized distributors that are providing us this wealth of content that our faculty demand and that we want to own for years and years. I want to make sure that I am directing my dollars in a way that makes people like Alex and other distributors and content creators be able to continue making great content and following up on these issues as they emerge so that I can then provide it. So I feel like it's really important to be partners and to talk about these things. The time has really come to talk about money and streaming video and what we're doing and how we're going to make this work. You know, it's been what, like 12 years ish, and I've definitely had every acquisition model you can possibly have. I think for streaming content, and you know they're evolving all the time. So that's really what I want to talk about. And I also, you know, I have to. So we have to draw the line somewhere, right? Academic libraries are not going to be able to provide everything. I must use my dollars for acquisitions that are for teaching and learning. And entertainment and personal edification are awesome, but the academic library may not be the appropriate content provider for that type of content. So yeah, I would love to have an institutional subscription to Netflix. I would love to be able to say, well, I have, all these feature films and awesome, indie films, and I have, I can provide all of this to the students and faculty, and still build a collection that's, that's amazing. But I can't do that. I don't have enough money for that. So when I have to make those choices, then my choices are to do what I think is the right thing, which is to make sure that I'm acquiring content that builds value for the institution, and that I'm spending my dollars in a way. I always say I like to wield power for good, and I think that the good thing, the right thing, is to try to make sure that the good return is going to the content creators and distributors. Yeah, I think that's it. While reserving some, of course, for short-term licensing, which is super important for specific teaching needs, course reserves, assignments, things like that. Oh, I have a slide.
I can click.
Oh, okay. Just so you'll kind of know what I'm talking about, I can actually show you some what I'm doing right now. And this could change in a year. It's definitely changed over the last 5 years and the last 10 years. But so I have some subscription platforms, Films on Demand, Academic Video Online from Alexander Street, Media Education Foundation, which lives on the Canopy platform, and I have that as a subscription. And also subscribe to Digitalia Film Library. For the limited term licensing for course reserves, I use Swank, Digital Campus, DocuSeek from Alex's company. I'm not really happy with using that for short-term stuff, but that's a conversation for another time. Some of the Ambrose BBC Shakespeare and Canopy for especially for things like Criterion Collection and things that I cannot acquire in perpetuity. Then what I'm really doing, and this is the exciting part to me, is this life of file purchase of digital files. So I'm now over 150 titles that I have bought with what we call life of file license, which is basically the same thing as when you would buy a DVD for $350, and then you use it until it bites the dust, and that's really what life of file is. It's sort of like life of format, and so that's what I'm doing, and I'm hosting those in several places: Films on Demand, the New Day Films platform, Academic Video Online. I'm also hosting there, so I'm not hosting anything locally because I just really don't have infrastructure to do that. And I'm getting these films from all the suppliers you probably get requests from, so Grasshopper, Collective Eye, Women Make Movies, Kino, Lorebird, Juno, AFD, Typecast, it goes on and on. So there are, it's very, and I left out Good Docs, and I get a lot of stuff from Good Docs because they're good docs. And also the Tug core collection, I have purchased that in perpetuity. And I do have one unmediated, patron-driven platform, which is Film Platform, and it's sort of a niche documentary. They have the Roco films, and they have 300 or 400 documentary titles. So that's just to give you a picture of what it's like at Hofstra. Okay.
Hello again. So I guess I'd like to give you a little bit of history about Bullfrog. So Bullfrog has been distributing film for over 40 years. And I'm more than just the vice president of Bullfrog. My folks actually founded Bullfrog. So I've grown up in the film business. I've seen all the changes in format from 16 millimeter to 3/4 inch, to VHS and duplication, to DVD, Blu-ray, and now streaming. So my folks, they started making films about organic agriculture in 1970. Made a film with Allen Ginsberg. Yeah. Also made a beautiful film called Baby Swim. At any rate, Bullfrog's orientation has always been towards protecting the interests of filmmakers as much as possible. We've also seen ourselves as activists and trying to create change through education. So personally, I stepped away from Bullfrog after I graduated from college. I went to work for a nonprofit foundation on human rights issues, sustainable agriculture, and arts and culture, and was a strategic funder of these issues. And we worked to see where we could win on the ballot legislatively or legally to see how we could create change. And really, it turned out that everything was about tipping points. So public education is so important in creating that change. And so it led me back to Bullfrog. And so for Bullfrog, I really wear a lot of hats. And one of the things is developing screening campaigns for each of our films. So if there's a film about coal ash pollution, maybe we partner with the Sierra Club and really try and get the film out there via partnerships. DocuSeek obviously was the next change in format with streaming, and its history is that it originally was developed by Jim Davis at the dawn of the internet. He had created film distribution software, which pretty much every distributor used and still uses in many respects. And it was a search engine that you could search across the collections. So that's when we were ready for the streaming platform, we called ourselves DocuSeek 2. So our role has always been to be of service to librarians. So we realized that there's really no one size that fits all, and so our goal is really to develop a sustainable business model, and that means flexibility. So whether that's single titles or collections or various models, Bullfrog offers DSL licenses, and DocuSeek offers streaming licenses. So really the role of the distributor, though, going back a bit, is important. It's necessary in the overall process of making content available. It relieves film producers to do what they do best, which is produce the content. And it allows distributors to do what they do best, which is marketing and promotion. And entering the films in film festivals, getting reviews, really getting the film out there and acknowledged, and so it has value. Right, so it involves mastering and captioning and subtitling and developing key art, and really all in service of getting the films out there and noticed. And yeah, so, and the editorial function that distributors play is important that way too. There's more film than ever, so playing that role of curating and finding the best content on issues of the day is fundamental to us. And then again, trying to provide the service to the librarians in a way that meets their needs.
So there's definitely no size-fits-all model. At the University of Florida, we are not as, we don't have as broad of number of plans across providers as Hofstra does, but we're a little more fast and loose. We did have a Canopy PDA for a long time, unmediated. Great content, but it was just not a sustainable financial situation for us. We do have a DocuSeek EBA plan that's seemingly working out okay, but we do a lot of one-offs. So as faculty make requests, we source it as best we can, and we do host locally. There's a lot of talk about owning in perpetuity and whether that's a useful thing for libraries. And I think it's all about balancing that. Are you building a collection? Are you providing access? And I think it's a balancing act. You talked about that a little bit yourself. So it can be harder because a lot of the digital site licenses are those one-offs. You get them from individual distributors sometimes, and they're a lot more of a hassle. You're having to have a file FTP'd or emailed to your staff, and they have to download it and send it off to somebody, either a Canopy or whoever can host it for you, or your local IT people. So there's a lot of extra staff time involved in that. And then I think, again, with like the short-term licensing, it's back to that balance of are you trying to build a collection then in this area, or are you trying to meet immediate needs? And honestly, I don't know that University of Florida is quite sure where we're going with that right now. There's no clear path forward at the moment. We're just kind of trying to meet needs as quickly as we can without blowing our budget. We have a $13 million budget overall, and only like about 600,000 of that is what's the word? Discretionary. Thank you. I always blank on important words when I'm on stage. Isn't that nice? So a very small portion of that is discretionary. So, and about $400,000 of that is contributed allocated to firm orders. So 50 some odd selectors. And talking about media, you have a nice spreadsheet, and it sounds like you get to select most of the media at your institution. I have like 50 people selecting media, and they can use about 75 different budgets to do that. So it's complicated and convoluted. So did I hit all the points? Okay, great, awesome.
So yeah, I was going to talk a little bit more about balancing this life of file and the short-term licensing. So really, it's about workflows and institutional change. So the balance, sort of the site license, the getting the file is, as Trey mentioned, and if you've done this, it takes a lot of time up front. So I emailed the distributor and I said, I'm interested in life of file for this title, and by the way, can you give me a discount? I always ask. Should always ask for a discount. You know this, right? And by the way, because all they can do is say no, and they usually don't. And so then I grab the file, I download the file. That takes so much memory on your computer. Like, you got to have a separate computer just to download video files so you can actually get other stuff done while that's happening. And so then it's got to be uploaded to a hosting platform. You've got to add metadata. You get it into your catalog. And something that I've recently been finally getting done at Hofstra is getting this information into OCLC, because I think it's really important for the future, because controlled digital lending is coming, and we're gonna figure this out. So I'm gonna be able to loan a file to another library in a way that's secure, and that I'm not doing something wrong. It's that one-for-one lending. I'm convinced that this is going to happen, and it's like interlibrary loan for a streaming video, but in a way that is very much in accord with the spirit of interlibrary loan, and but for that to work, I've got to record in OCLC that my institution owns this title. So, when I started getting these life of file licenses, I was in the back of my mind, I was thinking, yes, it's important, and we need to do that. And we had some personnel changeovers in cataloging unit, and so we're really just now sort of finalizing that and getting that process going so that is done regularly. And so, obviously this is, it takes a lot of time, and it is really disruptive. So if your institution is like every institution and sort of handles change like that in a way that is like glacially, slow, if you want to do this, you really have to work with people at your institution to explain like why you want to do this. And yes, it is a pain, and yes, it's more expensive up front than what is, some if somebody asked for Citizen Kane for a 2 sections of 37 students each last week, and I went on my Swank platform and I put in my request, and it was there by the end of the day, and the professor was thrilled, and it took me about 5 minutes, and that's obviously like really different from everything that goes into the life of file licensing. And so I think that as librarians, it's really incumbent on us to do this thing that is hard and that costs more up front, because we are building our library collection for our institution, and it's really important. But it is a pain. The workflow is kind of a nightmare, and I have been able to affect that change at Hofstra, but it has not been overnight, for sure. Yeah.
How are we on time?
That's it.
We're about 30 minutes. So I think one of the things about the workflows, for cataloging and discovery, there's a lack of metadata in one about video or for video, and then how so the big players are often in your knowledge bases for your discovery layers, but the little guys obviously aren't, and that's really problematic for discovery, and I don't know how to fix that, but it needs to be addressed on some level. Do you guys have questions? Yeah, awesome.
So I have a question about streaming video. It isn't necessarily about the things that you discussed, but as librarians, we're all aware that there is content on some of the big commercial platforms. New York Times is doing stuff that's sitting on Hulu, right? Is that what I remember?
They also have some on their own platform.
Right. And have you or has anybody in the room been able to have any conversations with these commercial publishers about how we could get access to just that kind of content, that they have an opportunity? It's not a huge market, but it's an opportunity for another revenue stream.
So can you just clarify, are you talking about direct-to-consumer licensed content?
Yes.
Like Netflix?
Yeah, but they have great, sometimes they have great documentaries
Oh.
there that they're making themselves.
Yes, right. New York Times does. And so these discussions are happening at all kinds of levels. I actually have been working first doing some advocacy with Carrie Russell from the ALA policy office, and we are it's sort of contract override, you know, so we've got all these Netflix and Amazon terms of service, and, you know, that say, well, you can do in an individual use, blah, blah, blah. And so, yes, this is a huge discussion, and it's really, it's relevant, and I'm glad you asked about it. Because I know that there are conversations taking place. I mean, I think that the thing with ALA that I've kind of been working on is just trying to get something into law or best practices that says it's okay to not pay attention to the terms of service. Tell your faculty member they can show an episode of Stranger Things in a classroom, and they're not going to get in trouble. I mean, I think the reality is they wouldn't get in trouble anyway. I mean, if your university got one Netflix account and gave the password to, every professor, and there was like a ton of usage on that one account, that might raise red flags. But I think that Netflix doesn't care. They don't care if you're showing some of their content. And there are like 40 titles on there that are licensed that can be shown in classroom or even in a public performance. But it's a huge issue because we can't even buy a DVD of that stuff. So if I would like at Hofstra, so I have tried to get a physical copy of Strong Island, that documentary from a couple of years ago. It's very relevant for Long Island studies, and I cannot get it, and I have tried. And that's on Netflix. It's a Netflix original, and so what happens is that a filmmaker their film gets picked up by Netflix. They make this exclusive contract. They get a lot of money, and they are then tied into that distribution model, which is only on Netflix, and it just obviously it's a huge problem, for libraries. So there's some sort of backdoor ways that we've been working on it. I know that this new Julia Reichert film, American Factory, is now a Netflix original, and she was one of the founders of New Day Films. So it's gone. That's kind of crazy, isn't it? Yeah, it's a little bit crazy that now that we can't get a DVD of that. I'm already having requests for it. It's like 2 months out, and people are like, you need to buy this. I'm like, well, yeah, I would like that. I would like to buy it. So these conversations are happening. I know that some of our distributor friends in the room are reaching out and trying to have these conversations. So I think that our distributor partners, who we know are capable and of handling this type of content for the educational market, are definitely trying to make those inroads. So hopefully it's just a matter of time, but it is so frustrating. It's so frustrating. Do y'all want to say anything about that?
Well, from a distributor perspective, there's been a massive sea change with how Netflix operates just in the past 6 months. So in terms of actually acquiring content, they've backed way off. So I think a lot of it has to do with the other players coming on the market in terms of Disney and Apple Plus. So they used to offer 3-year contracts, rights locked up, and then more recently it's been 1 year, and even more recently it's been 6 months. So there's something going on there. I can speculate, but and the way they operate has always been, has been increasingly difficult. So they used to deal with filmmakers. That quickly disappeared. Then they dealt with a lot of distributors, and then that stopped. And then they dealt with a lot of aggregators, and then that stopped. And now they really only deal with a handful of aggregators. So actually, that's another role that distributors play, because if you're a filmmaker, you're never going to get your film on Netflix unless you're that one filmmaker who gets lucky and has your film win Sundance, and then they might give you lots and lots of money. But otherwise, it's incredibly difficult. So, right. So, having those conversations with them about unlocking rights is a hard one. You might have seen just the other day that big film, The Irishman, right? They're only allowing it to be in theaters for 2 weeks. So they're contracting in some ways, right? They're trying to keep those rights locked up as much as possible, so that makes it difficult. But certainly, I would say that we are doing our best to get in there and do what we can to unlock things as best we can. But there's big changes afoot.
So speaking of unlocking, I think you're talking about in the streaming format, native streaming format. There's also a lot of content that's locked up in dead formats, and then the University of Florida just joined a really interesting program that I think Sarah probably knows the most about, at least more than me. So I'm gonna let her talk about it, but I'm really excited about it.
I'm super psyched that you put it that way, as content that's locked up in dead formats. So I've been working on a project that's called the Academic Libraries Video Trust, and we are crowdsourcing due diligence and copyright searching for VHS content that is no longer in distribution, and making that we cannot buy. So when your professor who uses that VHS every semester, we're sort of going to be there for when he puts it in that 35-year-old VHS player in the classroom, and it gets destroyed. So what we're doing is we're a collaborative group of libraries, member libraries, and we're a database, and we document where we looked for the content. So I looked on Amazon, and I looked in OCLC to see if this thing ever had a distribution in a contemporary format. And then once we've sort of done all that due diligence, then we are digitizing that film and uploading a file to the Video Trust. Now, it's not a streaming platform. It's not a place to get new content. It is a place to get access to content that you already own. So, for example, there's this really well-known documentary series about water in that's called Cadillac Desert, and it has never been released on DVD or in a which is really not anymore a format that we are going to be able to acquire, I don't think, for long. So there's that. But so I own it. We own it on VHS at Hofstra. So Section 108, the copyright law says that I can make a copy of this if it's in a format that is deteriorating, damaged, lost, stolen, and not available in the commercial market for replacement. But the nice thing is, my friend Phil Salvador at American University already digitized their copy of the VHSs of Cadillac Desert and put it into the Video Trust. So since I own it and I am entitled to it, I can go into that site, and the files are stored in AWS. And I can then get a digital copy for my library. And so this is, we're really kind of just starting. We're in about 18 months in now, and we have a number of founding members. Hofstra, Duke, Michigan is joining. They just committed, I think. University of Delaware, University of Florida, Florida State, several of the Virginia, the Viva Consortium libraries, Berkeley, UNC, Chapel Hill. I know I'm leaving somebody out. University of North Texas, Penn is a member. So we're expanding, and and I think this is a project that's going to grow into some other really exciting things once we get our nonprofit status sorted out, and we'll be able to apply for grants. And what we'd like to do is add transcripts and caption files to these VHS that never even had that. So start adding value, and then when we have controlled digital lending, then we can start to think about sharing that content with other libraries who may not have owned that content originally. So it's at videotrust.org. If anybody wants to talk to me about it, I would be thrilled to talk to you about it.
So I have an embarrassing story from my childhood. So when I was about 3 years old, my grandmother gave me a VHS tape for Christmas, and the VCR ate the tape, and it traumatized me for about 4 years. They had to take me out of the room in preschool when they would show videos. I would have a meltdown. You know the TVs in the children's department of department stores that would play Care Bears or whatever? We couldn't go into the children's department. I would have a meltdown. So when I learned about the Academic Video Library Trust, I was, yes, we're getting rid of the VHS. So I thought it was hysterical. It's fine if you don't.
Now I know, and now I know why University of Florida wanted to join. The backstory.
Yes, now.
Yeah, sign me up.
What do you guys want to talk
Yeah,
about?
what do you want to talk about?
Please.
Yes, come on up.
Hi, my name is Dan Trout. I work for the Rochester Institute of Technology, and we have one of the largest deaf populations on campus. As a result, when we purchase any videos, we have to make sure they're closed captioned for our patrons. And I wanted to ask about your advice about seeking out sustainable workflows to ensure accessibility for all patrons who might need them. If you have any, hey, you should remember to do this kind of thing. And we should definitely talk about the Video Trust, because we have a large collection of VHSs that are closed captioned.
Yay.
Thank you.
That is not my area of expertise.
Well, yeah, I mean, well, with DocuSeek anyway, we do our best to closed caption everything. Of course, the older titles, that is a problem. Some that never made it from VHS to DVD. Yeah, so that's something that we've had to do. So we've spent an awful lot of time and effort in doing that and trying to make things as accessible as possible. So going back and ripping all of those DVDs and remastering those films and having the captions remade.
But I will say that when I purchase a digital SCI license, a life of file license from a distributor, I always ask for the SRT caption file so that I can, at the very minimum, have the caption option. Some are now doing the audio description, which is wonderful. But one of the things when Alex was talking about what the distributor does is getting things captioned, providing caption files. Yes, and when I get these files from some of the smaller distributors or directly from the filmmaker, and when they say, oh yeah, you can download the file. You paid your money. I say I need the caption file too. I've actually had someone who is a filmmaker and who I've known for a long time say to me, how do I get a caption file? You're asking me for something that I don't know what it is and I don't know how to get it. And so I made some suggestions, and I said there's this rev.com, which is pretty fast and pretty good, and it's like 99 cents a minute. So it can be done. I think there's an article in Journal of Copyright and Education and Librarianship from maybe about 6 months ago that Stephanie Towery from one of the University of Texas libraries, I think it's maybe Texas State, I can't remember, but it's in Journal of Copyright and Education and Librarianship, and it's exactly about this issue because she did a presentation on it at ER&L in the spring, and they have developed workflows for getting captions. They're using Rev and doing the upload, and then taking the thing back and checking it, and then mashing it together with the video file. And it's really not, it's not hard. I mean, for me, when I'm putting things in Films on Demand, that's why I put files into Films on Demand. It's because they can handle the caption file. So, I mean, that leads to a whole other discussion of where you're hosting. But, you might wonder, like, well, why is Sarah hosting all these films in like 3 or 4 different places? And I'll tell you exactly why. So in Academic Video Online from Alexander Street, it's free. And free is great. I like free, but there's a limit to the file size. The limit is 4 gigs. And they have not yet incorporated the ability to upload a caption file with the video file and have them, work together. They said, well, you can upload the caption file as a separate item, and I said, you guys, come on, and they actually did help me out with some that needed to be done. They want to fix it. They kind of went the quick and dirty route, and and then in Films on Demand, you can upload the caption file, and if you have an education package, like a PDF with discussion guide and all that, then they're prepared to host that kind of thing. So. And with a subscription to Films on Demand, you get like your first 50 titles or 25 titles for no additional cost, and then they have incremental pricing that goes up as you add more titles. But it's affordable. It's affordable. It was for I have almost 100 titles there, and I think it's like $500 a year. So it's it's reasonable. But yeah, the captions are it's important, right? But look for that article. Okay. I appreciate it. Sure. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Lala Badal, and I'm from California Lutheran University. My question is about your time management for the files that you are purchasing. How long does it take you from the request, from the time you get a request from the faculty, acquiring the film, creating a file, and making it available on the platform?
Trey's staff does it. He doesn't know. It's funny that you asked that, though, because one of the distributors, I was trying to explain, this process, and he said, can you have your people do it? And I'm looking around, where are my people? But no, it kind of depends on the distributor and if they have a file ready to go, for you and have the caption files. I'm fortunate in that I can do those acquisitions directly. If it had to go to central casting, it would add, I can't even imagine how much. I mean, I have a friend at a university in Minnesota, a private university, and she's been struggling with her acquisitions team to explain that the contract for a digital site license is really not any different from the contract that you had when you got a DVD from Bullfrog, right? Like, you have that whole terms of service on your website, and it's basically like you don't really own this, but you have it, and as long as the DVD lives, and then call us for a format upgrade, or but it's so it's really not any different. But her team is saying you need to go through contract review on every one of these. So she's really frustrated by this because, as you know, at least at Hofstra, when it goes into contract review, we have absolutely no control over it. It just sits in the pile until general counsel gets to it and does the review and then approves it, and the vice president for finance signs off on it, and then we go ahead. So the answer is it really depends. But the downloading of the file and then the adding metadata and uploading the thing is probably an hour and a half. It's really, once the tricky part is getting all the pieces that you need, and doing the negotiation and then actually having the file available. Once you have the file and the caption file and whatever else goes with it, a still to show up on the screen, then that part goes pretty quickly. But the acquisition piece of it is really complex, and it would be really nice if our distributor friends would figure out a way that we can just click a button and get a bill, or that would be great.
Thank you.
I know that my department has been able to turn this around in a couple days in some cases, and in some cases it can take weeks. That's all I can say about that.
I guess it also depends on the distributor too. Many of them, are trying to incentivize a DVD purchase, so they may require you to rip it yourself, and that obviously is going to add a few steps.
Getting into negotiation with direct distributors as well can be awful. We had a situation when we first started doing this. There was a well-known documentary out there, and the people in like the instructional designers on campus had reached out to the filmmaker directly, and then they heard that the library might pay for it, so they called me. So then I reached out to the filmmaker directly, and I said, well, maybe one of our streaming video aggregators can help me with this. So then I asked them to reach out to the filmmaker, and the filmmaker got mad. He didn't understand, and ultimately we never got the film because he thought we were trying to rip him off. So it's really important to sort of streamline that communication as much as possible, especially with filmmaker. If you're dealing directly with a filmmaker who doesn't understand academic libraries to begin with, it can get dicey.
Yeah, that's true. It can get dicey. I was just thinking about the things like when you have to rip it yourself. It's I've gotten pretty adept at handbrake. I even figured out how to download the extension that allows you to break encryption, which is, I mean, it took me like 3 hours of like Google and YouTube, and I got like that file, and then I keep having to have my computer reimage, and every time it's reimaged, I have to go find that extension another time. But at least now I kind of know where to find it. It used to just come with Handbrake, and they took it out because they were like, we don't encourage ripping anything. Yeah, okay, all right, that's fine. So, what time is it? Oh, good, we're good. I just wondered how many of you still have VHS players in your classrooms? Oh, one. How many of you still have DVD players in classrooms? Some, not all. What are you going to do about that when? So what happened at Hofstra was we got an email from one of the head and IT people that said, over the summer we're going to take all the VHS players out of the classroom, but if you need any of that content, just take it to EdTech and they'll digitize it for you. And then I lost my mind. And it's now, but your story about it going to IT first and them calling you is just really resonates with me, because the faculty have no idea. Like they have no idea, and they take a stack of DVDs to EdTech and fill out this form, and then they fill out a fair use checklist, and then they say they want to, digitize this stuff and put it on Blackboard for their students. And then Ed Tech calls me, and I'm always like, no, let me find it. Maybe I can find it. And probably 3/4 of the time I do find it, and then I buy it. And thank goodness sometimes it's really quick, and I can I can turn that around quickly. But it's amazing how many of those requests come in through Ed Tech, and not seeing it as a library acquisition, but as I have this physical thing and I want it to be a digital thing. So will you do it? But fortunately, I have a good relationship with those guys, and they know to call me.
We had a librarian who had been very close to retirement for a very long time. Wonderful man. Every year he would come to us and say, I want to digitize these VHSs and I want to use the collection budget to do it. And my buddy over here, we're just going to pay him $50 to have him do it. And every year I had to tell him, no, we're not doing that. So it's interesting what people think they can and can't do. Does anyone have a really awesome relationship with your ed tech people? Oh, one person.
Tell us about it.
Yeah. How did you develop that relationship?
At a very small institution, 1,800 students. They're literally next door in the library.
For,
They're all in this together. All
Yeah.
very hard on education
yeah.
in these areas. And they just learn better to let her deal with it.
If you couldn't hear it, it's a small institution. They're next door. And she worked very hard to build that relationship.
I'll ask a question, and maybe you all can help answer this too. How do you balance requests to relicense streaming content for particular classes versus one-time purchases? Because that's what we're finding to be a big challenge. Is our online education programs are our biggest users of streaming video content, and some of the bigger ones, like our Masters of Social Work, kind of have an insatiable desire for streaming content. And so that could be $150 or $300 a year, or up to 3 years for a licensed, video. And then to relicense that every year, it's an ongoing cost. So then it feels like a serial purchase. And we've been getting a lot of resistance for that. So I'm balancing those relicensing streaming content, and that's for things, of course, that you're licensing and not owning, for particular departments or classes.
So the way we deal with that at UF, we have a centralized course reserve fund. It's not huge. I think we put like $55,000 in it every year, and and so we have a $500 per course limit. So I mean, you could take that model of limiting every year. This course can buy no more than X amount of dollars worth of content. Luckily, not everyone on campus knows about it. So. But yeah, we're less focused on collection building. It's something we want to try to start focusing on with streaming video, but we're such a STEM campus that, I mean, everything, it's like we need the current, and we have a tiny film studies department, and so we're trying to figure out how we can support collection building going forward while still maintaining, and I don't have a great answer, but the immediate need is what we focus on first.
Yeah, well, I would just say that if there's something that you're buying over and over and over again, or renting over and over and over again, reach out to the distributor and see if you can just own it, because you may be able to just pay them, $500 once and do all that upfront work that we've been talking about, and then you won't ever have to buy it again. Well, or not until the next format change, well, whatever the next thing is, then you'll need a format upgrade. But that's how I do it, and so I really try. I limit those requests for really. I'm only just for course reserves is the short-term stuff. Is really if I can possibly acquire something that makes sense to the collection for life of file, then that's what I do. And that's working for me because I used to be okay with just paying the 1 year license, as needed, and that just ended up not being sustainable for the budget that I have, which is actually a pretty healthy budget, but that no one can afford, to have everything. You just can't. So that balancing is thing. But I would just say if it's something you can do for longer than a year, then do it. If you're confident this is going to be used over and over and over again.
I'm curious if people are cataloging their 1 and 3 year streaming licenses and how you're keeping up with that. It's a battle between cataloging acquisitions and the librarians and those who want the titles to be discoverable, but who's going to keep up with getting them in and out of the catalog all the time?
So that's Amy Barrett from Woosel. we know her, and we like her. Thanks, Amy. So I think you'll remember from your days at UF, we don't do a very good job of that. It's really hard. You put a note in the order record, maybe you have a spreadsheet, but people forget. I think that goes back to like some of this content not being super available in knowledge bases for the discovery services. Like if it was an e-journal record, or if it was like an e-journal record, and I could just click a checkbox and say, yes, we have that, we have that, we have that, we have that, and then unclick it, and then let the automation take over, that'd be awesome. But you can't do that for everything, and some discovery services don't let you pick and choose for certain platforms. It's a messy, messy world. But right now we're doing basically loading records individually by hand, if you will.
So what I did was for things that I may need, like the Canopy content, for example, where you can get all those MARC records en masse, is we load them and then unsuppress the Media Education Foundation content, which we have as a subscription, and then a case by case unsuppress those records as we license that content. And so it's intense. It's labor intensive. I do a little bit differently for the Swank content, because that's typically like always related to a class. But there are a few Swank titles that I just always license, and if I could buy them, I would, but I can't. So I have a record in the catalog, and it's like 4 or 5. It's Blade Runner, 2001, The Matrix, maybe a couple other things. Everyone needs those films, But there's consistent use, and it's not so expensive that I feel like I can't do it. So those records are in the catalog, and Swank provides the MARC record if when I license something I wanted to go in and download that and put it in the catalog. But for me, it's just too much trouble. So I have a LibGuide that has all the platforms that we use on it, and sort of says this one does this and this one does this, and that's a way that people can discover content. But it's so hard. And I sent a link to the new content in Films on Demand out to the library faculty, and they had just added that country music documentary from Ken Burns, and I was like, hey, this is cool. This was on last week, and now it's in Films on Demand. And one of our library faculty was like pressing me, like me personally, about why was that not in the online catalog? And I'm trying to explain how like there's a lag and they get new content faster than they can get a MARC record, and that it's okay, and it's been this way for, you know, ever, and I guess he just never noticed. But yeah, so you know, you can't win, right? You just do the best you can. And, you know, I will say something that I personally have observed is that Canopy's done a really good job of search engine optimization. And so if I Google some film and streaming, the Canopy results come like they're right at the top. And this is, you know, probably how we get requests for that content. So, you know, and I guess that our other platforms that are more locked down, so the films on demand and academic video online, all that stuff's not coming to the top on a Google search. So that's something I, you know, would say to other distributors is like, do a better job, you know, because I would love it if if people Googled that documentary and the, you know, films on demand came up.
Sourcing videos is so hard. Sourcing videos is so hard. My staff, if you get a request for some niche title that isn't in one of the big aggregators, I mean, it can take hours to just determine that, oh yeah, it's really not available, you know, this week at least. And then, you know, 6 months later, you have to search again. So it's a pain in the butt.
Yeah, right now I'm trying to track down a DVD of a couple of episodes of an anime series that's only available on something called Crunchyroll or something like that. And I'm, you know, yeah, that's my life.
Any other questions?
Other,
Discussion points?
anybody need unsolicited advice?
So, all right, let's do some polling. Raise your hands if you're using a PDA or a DDA model for streaming video. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. What about EBA or EBS? A couple of us. How many of you allow your subject librarians to do individual firm ordering of this type of content? Pretty much everybody. Okay. Cool.
And is everyone using multiple platforms, or have you decided that like your university is going to be a one platform shop? Multiple? Anyone only have one?
Anybody not buying streaming video?
Everybody's buying streaming video? Yeah, it's super popular.
It's like nobody knew we had it, and then all of a sudden they all discovered that we had it, and now they're insatiable. It's like, I don't have enough money in the world to feed that animal. All right.
Okay, good.
Yay! This was awesome. Thank you for coming. Yay.